Hello, Piedmont Hills High School. This is Polly's podcast, the Legends Weekly Quarantine Podcast, here to give Piedmont Hills community new perspectives during this time. My name is Victor.
And I'm Joanne, and today we're going to explore the perspective of music teachers.
Okay, so now that distance learning has been implemented, the teachers that have had the hardest time to deal with these abnormal circumstances are teachers who are used to teaching in physical settings. So today we wanted to give you all a better perspective on how the music department is dealing with these changes.
So join with us today are two very talented and hardworking music teachers, so please introduce yourselves.
I'm Emily Ray. I conduct the orchestras and I also teach piano.
And I'm Myles Ellis, and I'm the band director and choir directors.
Okay, so moving on to some questions. So first question for you guys, how is quarantine going for the both of you guys?
Quarantine's going okay for me. I am actually probably getting a little bit more exercise than I was getting before because our school day is a little bit more compact and our school week is a little bit more compact. Although I do find myself late at night still listening to excerpts that students have uploaded. So I can't really say that the school day is more compact because my personal job as a teacher actually extends into the evening. But other than not being able to find what I want at the grocery store sometimes, I think it's going okay.
And for me, I would say it's going all right. Obviously it's not the preferred way that we'd like to be living right now. May is such an important time for my musicians and myself. We have music festivals to do. Right now we would have just done the school play. We have concerts, graduation to look forward to. There's all these activities, so it feels like I'm really missing something. But in terms of just the actual physical effect of quarantine, it's fine. I have a long commute, so it's nice not having to drive 80 miles to get to school, and then another 80 miles back. So that's a nice thing. It's been a little bit challenging working from home. I've had to kind of take a couple of rounds around my house to figure out where's the best spot for me to be at work. Because when I'm at home, I generally tend not to want to work. I do all my work at work. But I think we have it a lot better than a lot of other people who are, really, really suffering right now. So I don't have a lot of complaints. So looking forward to it being over, though.
Okay. I know it's very difficult to teach music in a virtual setting because it's usually in a physical setting. So how have classes been online on Zoom?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Just the technical issues. Like, for example, yesterday morning when I was trying to run my piano class, Zoom stopped on me 4 times. And so every time I go back, I wonder, are my students still going to be there, or will they have given up wondering what happened to me? So aside from just those technical glitches, the fact that I can't see my students in person is a real drawback because I can't tell how they're reacting to something. A lot of them do not show their faces during class, and it's kind of like those comedians that are on late night TV and they don't have a live audience anymore. They don't know if they deliver a joke, how it's being accepted on the other end, unless their little kid is sitting there making faces at them or something. It's almost like that when you're trying to teach through Zoom, and then the obvious difficulty of not being able to have the groups together, the ensembles together. That's really tough because I'm trying to listen to all my students individually, and many of them make the same mistake. If we're in a classroom setting, I could address that all at once and we would fix it. Whereas now I have to sit there and type it out 4 or 5 times per section, and then another section might have a different mistake, and then I have to type that out. And typing takes so much longer than just saying it or being able to pick up somebody's instrument and demonstrate. So, and then we miss the camaraderie. You know, ensembles are just like teams, and teams can't function right now. They can't get together. Our ensembles can't get together. So even though most of my students are trying to be responsible and practice their parts, it's just not the same, especially if you don't have a goal to work towards. We don't have any sort of concert schedule that we're working towards. So the incentive for a lot of students to play is lessened. And the piano students, I've just given up on trying to even teach music theory that I usually teach along with my piano classes, because it's so difficult just trying to teach piano through distance learning. Why complicate it with music theory, especially when only 50% of my level 1 students are showing up each week. You know, it's just not the same as them having to come to school, and well, then they've got to go to class because they're already at school. You know, the physical presence. And I just miss the interaction with the students who are goofy and fun and lovable.
Yeah, and a lot of what I say is going to be similar to what Miss Ray said as well. You know, I'll start with where she ended, which is, you know, the camaraderie is one of the reasons why I love teaching. You know, I've always played in ensembles, and I love to be part of the group. You know, I don't know, Victor or Joanne, if you've ever gotten an opportunity to play in an orchestra or sing in a choir or be in a band, but everybody is really collaborating there. It's not the typical teacher-student dynamic that you have, because everybody plays an important role in creating this sound. You know, as you can be the most talented director in the world, but if you're in the room by yourself, it's just you waving your stick in the air. And I kind of feel like that's what it is right now, because, you know, there's so much of our job that is inside the classroom, where there's a synergy that goes on that you cannot create that online. There's no way to do it. And these collaborations that you see, you know, on YouTube and stuff like that, where a bunch of people get together and play music, are not really people playing music live. That's everybody playing their own part to a background track, and then somebody with a program putting it all together. So it sounds like it's there, but you didn't get any of the synergy that goes on between the musicians. So I really miss that a lot. And then also, as Miss Ray said, it's very arduous to do all of the corrections these ways. You know, it's funny, she was talking about something where everybody makes the same mistake. I just corrected 55 wind ensemble parts where I made almost the exact same comment on 40 of them, because 40 of them screwed up a rhythm in the same exact way. I just actually started copying and pasting because it was the same thing. And that's something that could have been dealt with in about 5 seconds in class, but ended up taking a really, really, really long time. You know, part of it is the way that we do assessment too. You know, generally in a band, orchestra, or choir, the assessment that we do is formative and flowing in nature. It's a constant stream of students providing us with data, and we giving feedback back to the students. And it's a very kind of organic process that happens as a natural process of the group. This is very unnatural, having all of these musicians record individual excerpts and then going back through and having to comment on it. You know, I'll do that several times a day, several times during the semester, you know, if I need to hear individuals, but it won't happen every week where I have 195 things to correct that I actually have to make comments on. So it's very time consuming, and it's not nearly as effective as the normal way that we teach. So yeah, so we're doing, I think, the best that can be expected. I'm lucky enough to have most of my kids showing up in class, but it is kind of demoralizing when they don't, you know, because, and I think the reason is most of the time is that they have a good grade and they don't want to worry about having to do any work, because they know at the end of the day they're going to get that A that they had on March the 13th, which is a bummer, because I always preach to my students the value of education. You know, it's not really about getting grades, it's about learning. And if you're taking an opportunity to learn, it really doesn't matter what the grade is. It just matters whether or not you learned it. So I get bummed when kids take the opportunity or don't take the opportunity to learn when they've got free instruction, right here, ready to go. That doesn't happen when you graduate. You don't have teachers at your beck and call that are willing to offer expertise for nothing. So anyway, but that's kind of the gig right now, with the online learning. It's definitely not the way to do performance-based ensembles, that's for sure.
So since both of you guys already went through like the challenges you guys are facing through Zoom, on the other hand, have you guys been seeing any surprising benefits to teaching your students through distant learning?
I can't think of too many benefits from it. Yeah. I guess the only benefit is maybe I'm doing a little bit more individualized assessment, so I can provide more feedback on things like tone quality and such. But I mean, that's so far outweighed by the negatives that, yeah, I don't think there's a lot of benefits to doing it this way, from my perspective.
Yeah, I don't see any benefits at all to doing Zoom. Having the students upload their excerpts and listening to them individually, whereas I would most of the time not be doing that in my orchestras. That's been a little bit of an eye-opener for me. But as far as teaching music through Zoom, no, it's not beneficial at all not from my experience.
Mm.
Okay, and just for our audience, just so if they didn't know, why can't you instruct all your students to play at the same time on Zoom?
Well, technically, that's a terrible idea, actually, because everybody's internet is different, and so when you have even just two people trying to sync themselves up together, you have a difference in how I hear what you're doing and you hear what I'm doing. There's no way to really stay together because the internet speeds are different and the way that we're hearing is different. So it's really impossible to teach everybody at the same time.
Yeah, there's a lag time, and everybody's lag time is different.
Mm.
Okay, and how did you feel when you were told that all these music events were being canceled that usually happen in the spring?
Disappointment with a capital D. I mean, just my students were supposed to do a concert. My string orchestra students were supposed to do a concert on March 14th, and no, or was it March 7th? It was March 7th, actually. Yeah, we were supposed to do it March 7th, and the city started closing the community centers, and I found out that was it that morning or else late that night that my students' concert had been canceled for the next day. So I had to scramble and try to email. Well, I actually got on the phone and I tried to call everybody. I sent out an email, but I know a lot of people don't look at emails. So I actually called everybody who I had a phone number for, and to make sure that they didn't go down to the community center. And also the Symphony Orchestra was going to go to a festival in Sonoma that we'd never attended before. It's in a really beautiful concert hall, and that was the one thing that I really wanted to do for my students before I retired, and that was to give them experience of performing in a really nice concert hall. I mean, the L building is not a concert hall, and Independence Theater, Evergreen Valley Theater are basically built more for drama. So acoustically, they're not pleasing for music performances. And that's just the one thing that I really wanted to do for my students, was give them the opportunity to play in a hall where they could really hear themselves and could sort of bounce off each other's sound, because they don't get to do that in the G building at all. It's all soundproofed, it's very dry, and a lot of times I can't hear what's going on in the back of the room. So that, plus the end of the year concerts, as Mr. Ellis mentioned, I mean, that's something that I think we all look forward to, is that end of the year concert, and we say goodbye to the seniors. So it's, again, it's disappointment with a big D. Yeah.
Yeah, I really felt disappointed for the graduating seniors, first of all, because we built in a lot of kind of ritual at the end of the year, you know, and they've seen, you know, all of them have seen 3 years of, you know, watching the graduating seniors walk across the stage and get their rose and be acknowledged by the audience. You know, and now they don't get to do that. You know, the kids in the graduating seniors in choir, there's always a song that we do at the end of the year that's kind of a big deal that we don't get to do. And then there's all of the work that we did on the musical too. The musical was really, really ready to go into production, and we just had to pull the plug on that. And that's like watching 3 months of your work just go right down the drain, you know, because we worked hard. There was a ton of after school stuff that happened there. And then, you know, we were, the choir program was a week away from a California Music Educators Association festival, and we were really, really ready to do super well there. And the bands were working on some fantastic repertoire that I was looking forward to doing in May. So it was really disappointing to have that all pulled out, you know, from underneath us. You know, I understand the reason why it had to happen, but there's no way to go back and replace those performances. We're actually kind of trying to figure out a way to at least maybe do some of the repertoire that we were working on next semester, and inviting our graduating seniors back to come play with us, especially because a lot of them are going to UCs and CSUs, and those are going to be almost all online, so they'll be in town if we're able to do something like that. But yeah, I mean, it was very difficult to deal with from the perspective of thinking about what the students are missing out on.
So you kind of already covered this, but if there's any way possible, are you both or the music department, are you guys planning on making up these events if there's any way possible?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you know, a lot of it depends on things that are out of our sphere of control, like when the county permits us to have any type of gathering. You know, right now, to get orchestra together or to get wind ensemble or concert choir together, it would have to be okay to have groups of 60 meeting together, to even just get the class there, to say nothing of an audience. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about a couple of different possibilities. One I mentioned before about the possibility of a fall concert that includes the graduating seniors. Another one is to do something during the summer, where I would come in and work with my groups for a week or something like that, rehearse the music back up, and then do a concert and live stream it. But we'll just kind of have to see. We've talked about all these things, but since we don't have concrete information about what's going to be permitted and what isn't going to be permitted, right now it's just talk. We can't make any definitive plans. But there is a sense with all of my students that they would like to do something, you know, to honor the graduating seniors, and also to do something to perform this repertoire, you know, at some point, to feel like they worked on music and now we get to present it. Because for musicians, you don't just ever like practice stuff just kind of out without a concert in mind or a performance in mind, you know, unless they're exercises. But when you're practicing repertoire, the expectation is that you're going to get an opportunity to perform that repertoire. And to not do that it'd be like asking an artist to paint a painting and saying, well, we're not going to let you put it up on the wall and show it. You have to stick it into your closet, you know. So we want to do that at some point.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to try to get the orchestras together during the summer. I'm thinking that July might be a possibility, because the predictions about the virus have sort of been according to what many people predicted. So it could be it'll be tapering off quite a bit in June, and so that maybe in July I'd really like to be able to get our groups together, even if it's just for like one last rehearsal, maybe not even performance quality. Again, I haven't had 100% turnout, so it's I don't know that those who are not participating now would suddenly come during the summer and start participating. So I can't really rely on that. But I think for the students who have been really practicing and putting time into it, that we need a goal in mind. And I'm hoping that maybe in July, even if it had to be in the L building with everybody sitting 6 feet apart and the string players wearing masks or something. At least we could maybe do that, and we would still be able to honor our seniors that way. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and all my toes that we'll maybe be able to get together in July before our students disperse to the seniors, disperse to the four winds, to the various colleges. And because I'm retiring, I wouldn't really have the opportunity to bring the seniors back in the fall, so I'd really like to do something this summer.
Okay, and this is the last question for our first part. So did you learn anything from doing distance learning? Like, have you come to any like newfound knowledge, I guess?
Well, I've never really used technology like this now, and because of this, I've had to become very familiar with it. I have a second job too, where I'm the music director at a large church in Santa Rosa, and we've actually been doing church on Zoom. And so I've actually had to really kind of work with the technology. So there's been that aspect. I've also learned that I really kind of miss. I think the most fun part of my job is the interactions that I have with faculty and students, and this has shown me that that's a big part of why I really enjoy teaching, because I don't have any of that right now, and I'm really missing it. So that's what I've gotten out of it.
Yeah, this has been kind of a premature retirement for me, because I'm not seeing my students. I didn't really get to say goodbye to them and any of the fellow teachers. So I guess I'm just piggybacking on what Mr. Ellis says, that I've learned, even though I felt it before, but the loss of the personal relationships has been kind of a blow. And I knew that since I was going to be retiring, I was going to be missing the students, but I'm having to miss them 2 months earlier than I would have. Mm-hmm. And again, not being able to say goodbye is kind of hard, so, but as far as the technology and stuff, I had heard of Zoom before, but I had never used it. And it just shows that you can still teach an old dog new tricks.
Okay. Input, and now we will be going on a small break.
Hello, you are listening to the Pirates Quick Report. I'm your host, Jose Flores Fernando, and I will be catching you up on things that have happened over the past week. There are 1.18 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 and over 60,000 deaths in the U.S. Global cases have reached 3.5 million with 247,000 deaths. Multiple states are set to reopen May 5th, starting with Phase 1 of the plan. Costco is requiring all shoppers to wear a face covering as of May 5th. 5 Bay Area counties in the city of Berkeley have extended their stay-at-home orders until the end of May. A new satellite has shown new images of Antarctica melting at the fastest rate to date. And that's all for this week. Now for the rest of Polly's podcast.
And we're back. So I know both of you conduct groups outside of Piedmont Hills. Mr. Ellis, you have the Santa Rosa Church Choir, and Ms. Ray, you have the San Jose Mission Chamber Orchestra. So in the second part of the podcast, we wanted to get a larger view of the musician's perspective during this time.
Well, I've had, let's see, we started canceling things. My first rehearsal, I think, was supposed to be March 13th with the Mission Chamber Orchestra for a concert on April 4th. And then we had to, we're canceling another concert that would have happened June 14th, I think is when it was supposed to be taking place. And the musicians really are anxious to get back to rehearsing again. The other bad thing was that I was planning to have some of the string players from Symphony Orchestra perform in a side-by-side with the Mission Chamber Orchestra on April 4th, and I know some of them were really looking forward to that. So unfortunately, they missed out on that. But yeah, a lot of the musicians have been kind of chomping at the bit, looking for opportunities to get together and play. This Portuguese concert that we do every year at Five Moons Portuguese Church, the second Sunday of June, some of the musicians, they weren't so crazy about doing it because a lot of times they'd be more interested in going on summer vacation. But this year, all of a sudden, all the music things evaporated, and their summer vacations have kind of evaporated. They're not traveling anywhere, and so I actually didn't cancel that concert myself. The Portuguese people canceled it, and so my musicians said, "Well, really? Did they have to cancel it? You know, we could have started rehearsing maybe late in May or something, or even in June." It just shows you how much they really want to play, and I've had to come up with 3 different plans for potentially our first concert in the fall. And one of the plans would include full orchestra. The second plan would include only strings, because I don't know if wind players would be able to get that close to us and not, they can't play with masks. So I don't know if they would require musicians to wear masks during performances in September. We don't know. My third option would be to pare it down to just chamber music groups, 4 or 5 people playing at a time. And then if they're not going to allow audiences, then our only other option would be to live stream. So there's all this uncertainty. On top of all the other uncertainty we already have in our lives, there's that uncertainty. And musicians, it's like they've been bitten by a bug or something. It's something that's part of them. They can't let go of it. It's something they have to do. And so they're all very anxious to get back to it.
Yeah, for my musicians at the church, that's pretty much the same thing. They're very antsy to start rehearsing again and performing. We had a big piece that we were going to be doing for Easter that had to get canceled, so that was a bummer for them. We had been working on it for quite some time. And the plan is when we finally do come back to actually perform that piece, even though it won't be at Easter time. It's funny because with music, and you've heard some of this with Miss Ray, a lot of the stuff that we do requires advanced planning, and you have to have a set of circumstances. Like, we don't just decide we're going to do a concert and the concert happens next week. You actually need to know that there's going to be that you're going to be permitted to perform, and you have a place to perform, and you've got music to perform, and enough rehearsals to make the performance happen. And right now, because we don't have an idea what the end game for this looks like, it makes it difficult to say, okay, well, in November we're going to be doing this piece, because we don't know what September, October, and August are going to look like. So they're eager to get back to it. Right now I'm basically providing all the music for all of the services at the church, when normally I would be directing a choir. I've also got a bell choir there. They would be playing, but we can't do any rehearsals. So it's basically all come down to me providing all of the music, it gives me an outlet to be musical, which is kind of cool. Normally I don't perform at that church, I direct. So, but yeah, they're very eager to get back, that's for sure.
Do any of you guys know how musicians are getting any source of income at the moment, or if they're getting any money at all right now?
Well, in the professional world, a lot of them are not getting any money at all. Especially people that do gigs, a lot of gigs and stuff like that. A lot of the symphony musicians I know, they're playing like 4 or 5 different regional symphonies. All of that's dried up, and it's not like they have a benefit program or something like that will pay them when they're not getting work. So it's hard. And I have a lot of musicians that are in New York that I know of right now that are asking questions like, do you think the music business is ever going to come back? And nobody's getting any money at all. So they're relying on stimulus checks, unemployment, where they can get it, although that's sometimes difficult for people that are independent contractors to get unemployment. It's pretty bleak right now.
Well, the soloist that I was going to have with the Mission Chamber Orchestra for my April 4th concert is Rufus Olivier. He is the principal bassoonist of the Performing Arts Orchestra in San Francisco. They provide the music for the San Francisco Opera and San Francisco Ballet. And so he called me the day that we would have done the concert, and he says, well, you know, we would have been playing this Weber bassoon concerto today, and so I was thinking about you. So he called me, and we talked for quite a while, and actually he's so busy that for him this is kind of a nice vacation. Just otherwise he's just playing constantly. He's probably one of the little bit older musicians in the orchestra, so he's had time to accumulate some money, plus the I think he said the ballet was going to pay them through April, something like that. They were actually going to get paychecks through April, but then after that they wouldn't. So he was kind of concerned about the younger players who haven't been playing with the orchestra that long. They haven't been able to build up a little bit of the savings that he's been able to build up. And so the summer series that they would have done, there's usually summer opera series in San Francisco, that got canceled, and he was disappointed because there was going to be a conductor he was really looking forward to working with. And so I guess he'll get the opportunity later, but he was disappointed from that standpoint. And financially, like I said, he's doing okay, but the younger people are not. And even people who play, for example, in Symphony Silicon Valley, that's not a full-time job. So they not only lost their performances there, but all the little side gigs that they would have done, plus teaching. Unless you're using Zoom or something to do lessons, which is a really hard way to do lessons. I've got some of my piano students who try to play live for me during our class, and I get all these funny overtones, and for 2 measures the music will just cut out completely, and then I'll pick them up after 3 more seconds, and then I can hear what they're doing. So unless these people are teaching that way, they've also lost all their students, all the income from the teaching that they would be doing for now. So that's been really hard for musicians. And then I just read an article last night about what are concerts going to look like in the future, because we may have to do social distancing for a while. And somebody did the math. They were taking Boston Symphony Concert Hall as an example with, I think it was 3,000 seats. And then, but you can only sell about 1,000 tickets. Because of social distancing, you have to cut out every other row, and then you have to keep a certain distance between people who are seated. And if they only sell 1,000 tickets, they cannot break even. So now these major companies and orchestras and ensembles are going, are we even going to be able to survive financially, you know, if we do start giving performances again? What is it going to look like? They're saying this virus is going to be around for another 2 or 3 years. And unless there's a cure found or a vaccine, nobody's going to want to risk their lives going to a concert. So I don't know, things could change drastically.
Yeah, so on that topic of like how the pandemic will negatively affect some music groups, so is it possible that a lot of these music groups might like disband or not exist any longer because of how things are right now?
Oh yeah, I think that's entirely possible.
Yeah, it definitely is, and part of the reason for that is because, you know, our government doesn't support the arts really at all. You know, in other countries, almost all the arts is government supported in some way, you know, and propped up. But you know, our major symphonies have to go begging basically every year, you know, so that they can just operate, you know. And now, you know, if you start taking away, you know, 50% of their audience when they were barely breaking even to begin with, then how are they going to survive unless they double the price of tickets? In which case, it's going to be possible for everybody, impossible for everybody to go. You know, or if they figure out some way to make it possible to do like a closed circuit performance of their performances and stuff like that, where people have to pay to see their performances in some way. But yeah, it really is difficult because of the already difficult financial picture for them even before any of the coronavirus.
So touching upon the topic of maybe quarantine to continue beyond the summer months, what do you guys think about considerations about performing live on either social platforms like Facebook or YouTube for your concerts?
Well, the problem is you can't rehearse if this virus is still very active in the community. People can't get together and rehearse. So if they can't get together and rehearse, they can't put it on social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's the first problem that would have to be solved, is how do we get all of these people together in one room? And if it's permitted to do that, you know, let's say they said, okay, so it's okay to have groups under 100, then yeah, I mean, I would much rather do a concert and have to live stream it and have no audience and not do the concert at all, for sure. Although then you get into the conversation of, you know, it's very hard to have the concert vibe if you don't have an audience there, because music is primarily communication, and it's very difficult to communicate to empty chairs. It really doesn't work. The energy is just not there. They're having the same conversations right now in sports, where sports teams are looking at playing games in front of an empty stadium and stuff like that, and a lot of the players are going, I don't know how I'm ever going to get up for this game. It's going to feel like a practice to me, you know. And there's a corollary between that and music too. We really do rely on the interplay between audience members and ensemble to create the atmosphere that's necessary to really produce music at its highest level.
Okay, so since like the future of music is pretty uncertain right now, what do you guys think it'll look like in like say 3 years, or will it like drastically change in any way?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part. Are you talking about concerts?
I'm just talking about like how like the music business will change because of this pandemic. Yeah. Like, what do you guys think?
I think they're going to have to be a lot smaller performances by more solo or, you know, small bands, small groups for a while. I kind of think that's going to be more of what you'll see out there rather than the large ensembles, for the reasons that we were talking about before, like the concert hall, trying to figure out seating and getting enough people in to pay the ticket prices, as Mr. Ellis mentioned, would have to triple or even quadruple to have the smaller audience pay for a performance or a series of performances. And are people willing to dig that much deeper into their pockets? It remains to be seen, but I kind of doubt it, especially coming out of a period when a lot of people have been out of work. You know, their first thought is going to be getting food on the table and getting the things that they had to forego when we were under quarantine, or just finding a job, because a lot of people have lost their jobs. So I think that to expect people to come and pay $80 to hear a performance by a large group is just going to be kind of out of the question for a while. And so musicians are going to be really anxious to perform, but I think a lot of it's going to be much more scaled down and smaller, like more private performances by invitation maybe, and free or by donation. Yeah, things are going to be quite different for a while, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while for us to recover from this. you ask it how it would look in 3 years, hopefully in 3 years, if we found a cure or a treatment for the virus, we've gotten back to some semblance of normal, but there's no doubt there's going to be a fallout from this on the big stage. I think from an educational standpoint, if you look at school, within 3 years, if we have a cure for this, then I think we'll probably be back to where we are right now, because we're not depending on the public coming to our performances in order to remain viable. The financial part, though, is a big one, though. For example, if you were playing in the San Francisco Symphony, and they do get, I think, about $140,000 a year there, and they said, hey, we're going to have to cut your salary to $70,000 a year to be able to afford you. You wouldn't be able to live in the Bay Area, for that. You would find it very, very difficult. So you might find that big symphony orchestras and other type of musical ensembles like that find it very, very hard to exist in large cities where it's already expensive to live. That's going to be a real difficult thing, unless private corporations come in and start funding the arts, because I don't think the government's going to be in any position to fund anything. California's is going to take a huge hit from all of the tax revenue that we've lost, and I wouldn't depend on the federal government to do anything useful ever. So, I think we are definitely looking at a change, and not for the better for a while. On the other flip side, perhaps it will make people realize how much they miss, listening to really, really good music, and it might raise an awareness for why it's important for a culture to support the arts too. That might bring this into sharp relief, something like this.
Okay, so
One can hope.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, now we'll go on our second break for performance with Petey.
Welcome to Performance with Petey, the segment of the show where students share and listen. I'm your host, Jose Flores Fernando, and before we begin, I would like to announce that this segment is opening up submissions to include short instrumental performances, vocal performances, and visual art video reels. To find out more, stick around for the end of the segment. Now, for today's episode, I will be performing an autobiographical monologue that I had written in late 2018. It went on to win the award for Best Autobiographical Monologue by an advanced drama student in the 2019 Drama Department Petey Awards. I hope you enjoy this special vocal rendition of Confession Box. Someone is hurting me, and I don't know who it is. But the more I look around, the sooner I realize that I hate this box. And I hate saying hate. And the reason I hate this box is because it reminds me of me. It reminds me of being trapped and alone and useless and dark. Darkness. Maybe it's darkness that's hurting me. The darkness in people just so mean. And I don't mean that they are, I'm just saying they can be. And it's when they choose to be that I begin to hate. I hate saying hate. What I mean is, I strongly dislike it when someone's being an asshole. Once, in the morning, an asshole walked up to me and said something. Not hello, not good morning, not anything un-assholey. He said to me, "So, when do you think you're getting deported?" That's funny. You understand. But that's not it. I think it has something to do with the streets. Because when I walk on the streets, do you know what I see? I see people with the blood of my people, walking like we're all in one giant ghetto, living in a hole they dig deeper. And I hate it. And I hate them. And I hate saying hate. And I hate myself for hating them because the hate we get is enough. And the more I look around, the sooner I realize that that could have been me. That could be me, had my parents not moved us out of that little apartment on Gooster Avenue between the Kellogg's factory and the plaza where men smoked pot at night. Yes, it's tough all around, but at least I'm lucky enough to say that I'm here and not there, and yet somehow that hurts me. And it's all in that box. It's all in a box that locks me up and holds me down. It's all in this box. This box whose debriefment somehow evades me. It's all this box, and yet... there's nothing in this box. Nothing but me. But nothing worthwhile. Yet. End poem. Thank you for sticking around. As you know, this segment requires that students enter pieces of their own to the show. In the coming weeks, we at The Legend will make it easier for students to both participate and be inspired. For now, we'd like to invite students from music classes, such as band, orchestra, and choir, to show off their talents and original work. Likewise, if you are a visual artist who is working on a personal project, such as painting, sculpture, or photography, we would love to see a video reel showing how it was made. Remember that any student can get his or her art shown in Polly's podcast. Just loop mail Jose Flores Jimenez, grade 11, and fill out the Performance with PD survey. That's all for this week. Now, for the rest of Polly's podcast.
And we're back again. We're at the end of our podcast here with our two amazing music teachers. So I wanted to give the floor to you guys. What do you guys think, or what do you want students to take away from this quarantine as musicians, future musicians, or just students in general?
Well, I was hoping that being away from school, my students who really only had time to play their instruments when they were at school, I was thinking that they would really, really miss playing. If they really are interested in music, I would think that they would miss playing. Some of them, it doesn't seem like they have because they haven't shown up to class. But for, like I mentioned before, it's like being bitten by a bug or a muse or something when you really discover a love of music or a love of anything and you become passionate about it to some extent. Then when it's taken away from you, then I think it gives you a much better appreciation for what it is that you've lost. And if it really did mean something to you, then you're going to want to try to stay engaged with it later on. And my goal as a teacher has been to try to show my students various avenues that they can take after graduation for continuing playing their instruments or being involved in music. And probably this quarantining has just brought extra emphasis onto that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would like to say pretty much the same thing. You know, my message to my graduating seniors is that I don't expect music to be their profession, you know, for most of them, but hopefully it's their passion, you know, throughout their lives. There's so many people that are out there working in the community at a different job, but their real passion is for music. You know, our expectation as music teachers is not that we're graduating, you know, all of these future professional musicians or music teachers, but we want to create a situation where they have been bitten by the music bug and that they continue to pursue it, because it's a lifelong pursuit. You never get to the point where you know everything. Even the very best musicians still take lessons. You know, for me, what this situation is hopefully doing for them is the old adage of absence makes the heart grow fonder. I'm hoping that it continues to show them that they have an appetite for music. And for our graduating seniors who haven't chosen their classes, maybe they'll join an ensemble now because they realize what their life was like, without music, and that they don't want to have that. I think for a lot of them, they go into college with this idea is, I'm a business major, so I'm just going to take my general ed and I'm going to take business. And what they don't realize is it's very easy to fit an ensemble into there. And if they do that in their freshman year and they're successful with it, they can continue to do that all the way through college. You don't have to be a music major in most of these colleges to take music classes. So I'm hoping that they are inspired by losing music right now to continue to pursue it after they've graduated. So that's my hope anyway.
So do you have any last minute comments you would like to say to your students, to our audience that are watching this?
Well, I guess it kind of piggybacks on the last question, and that is, I would like to reiterate what Mr. Ellis just said. I'm hoping that my music students continue with music somehow, even if they find they don't have time to practice and play their instrument, that they realize their love of music would be enjoyed by their children as well, and that they make sure that the music programs stay in the schools and they can become audience members if they don't have the chance to continue practicing their instruments. I can't tell you how many times after a concert somebody has walked up to me and said, oh, I used to play the flute, or I used to play the trumpet. I wasn't any good at it, but I kind of liked it, and I sort of miss it, and I really love hearing this music. And so these are the audience members. Our students are the audience members of the future, and I'm hoping that they realize that you need a balance in your life. You can't just be a computer programmer and sit in front of a screen for the next 50 years and not do anything else. There's a whole other world out there, not just music, but all sorts of arts, sports activities, clubs. There are lots of things that students should be carrying with them and thinking about, to be that whole person and not just narrow down to one specific field. There's so many things out there, and just being a parent opens up a whole new world to people. It's a really an amazing experience. Again, we want to make sure that our students, our children, our grandchildren have the same opportunities still to perform music that we have had in school.
Yeah, those are, I would double all of those comments that Ms. Ray said, and I would also say to all of the kids right now, I know that there's a lot of unknowns in the world like now. By this time, most of the seniors would have known where they were going. They would know what their graduation plans were going to be and who was going to be coming to their graduation party, and none of that is happening right now. And it's disappointing right now, but we will get through this. And I would just encourage everyone to remain hopeful and to keep a positive attitude and try to find the good in every situation, because sometimes even negative situations like this, there could be something good that you can get out of it. So I would just say keep your chin up, keep going along, keep believing in your education, and we will get through this just fine.
Okay, and that concludes the podcast. Thanks for joining us, and I hope that we get to have some kind of summer concert or fall concert, because that'd be really great.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
So too. Thank you for the opportunity.